My first experiences with crypto were around the 2017 to 2018 period. This is when I first started learning about the technology, and of course, I dabbled in buying a few of the coins. I didn't really make or lose any money during that time, but the more important thing was I also wasn't really that convinced that we were really that close to a scalable and practical solution where people were going to seriously start adopting these new systems at any scale. But all of that changed around the 2020 period during the big COVID crash. Now, this is when I really started getting interested in crypto and started seeing some of the real progress that was being made. And after that financial crash, I thought the crypto market was going to do particularly well in the coming months and years, as it was likely that governments were going to print a lot of money due to the lockdowns, as they were causing a lot of economic stagnation. Now, that turned out to be right, but the really valuable thing for me was during that time being able to go into even more detail to understand the technology. I was only then starting to realize and understand the implications and potential of the technology after thinking a lot more about how it could be applied to different areas. One of the obvious ones is it can help with replacing fiat currencies and the banking system. Though crypto will also eventually help with replacing social media networks, online marketplaces, and how we structure different organizations in the future. A particularly interesting area I really enjoyed learning about was around self-sovereign identity, which basically meant you'd be able to own your own identity and data instead of centralized services like Facebook, Apple, Google, etc. A self-sovereign solution would mean that instead of these central providers making money off your data, that you could make agreements with other people and services and decide whether you give them access to your data or not. And in exchange for that data, you could receive money or some other benefit. Or you might just choose to stay completely private. So the real opportunity was how you could participate in the digital economy in the exact way you wanted to. If you wanted a simple banking interface where another organization looks after your money like they currently do, well, you could still do just that. But now, by using Web3 technology, if you wanted to handle your finances yourself and allocate it to different financial protocols, like ones for lending and borrowing, well, now you could do that as well. And you could split your money and assets between a number of these approaches based on your exact preferences. You basically have much more choice and control over how you want to participate and interact with other digital services and people online. So all of this was very exciting. But one of the big areas I was particularly interested in was around governance, treasuries, and ecosystem funding. And what these areas meant for networks is how you can create circular economies that were similar to what we see with nation-state government systems. So a government taxes people, and then it uses those taxes to provide different services that are beneficial to society. People pay taxes each year, and then those services continue to get provided. A crypto network can do something similar, where some of the transaction fees that are collected can be used to pay for ecosystem initiatives that maintain the network or that could help with developing new applications and use cases. These circular economies could be really effective for speeding up the growth of these emerging Web3 networks and maintaining them over the long term. I spent a bit of time thinking about how you might improve and overhaul some of the processes and systems that are being used in the UK government. And if you hadn't guessed already, I'm from the UK. Generally, I felt the UK government and many other governments across the world were lagging behind companies that have been quicker to adopt better technology and processes to become more efficient within the organization. I hadn't really seen the same level of adoption of better systems and technology across the government, or at least from what I could see. I also wasn't that confident that the government itself was going to significantly improve these processes and systems fast enough in a world that is constantly changing at a really rapid rate. So my thought was it makes more sense to spend more time trying to build these new and emerging Web3 systems than it was trying to fix these older ones. And a reason for this is that once the new systems are built, existing governments could start to adopt these systems and any newer approaches. And after looking around the industry around that time in 2020, I was impressed with the efforts that Cardano was making on creating this decentralized governance system. Cardano is one of the many different Web3 networks. They had a funding process called Project Catalyst, and in the future, as transaction volume increased, more funding could become available to keep funding new projects. Now, I've had a lot of thoughts about the problems with using transaction fees as an income source, but we'll save that for a future video. So there was a lot of opportunity there to create a more effective and efficient governance structure that could make better decisions and fund things that are impactful. Solutions that, if they were adopted at scale, could be hugely impactful for society. During that period, I started analysing these funding processes and started making some suggestions to change and improve the funding process for Project Catalyst. And some of those ideas were adopted. But one of the most important ones, which was around funding contributors more directly instead of idea-based proposals, was something that wasn't of enough interest to those that were operating the funding process at that time. And after analysing the ways you could implement a funding process, I knew that this was a really important problem that needed to be properly solved. I also realised that the analysis I'd been doing was relevant to any crypto network. So I wanted to adopt a better strategy to encourage more experimentation with the most promising ideas for creating an effective funding process in these emerging Web3 networks. And we'll talk about that in the next video.